Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis, personal response, and discussion of how these chapters connect to the rest of the series. As usual, we're beginning the video with a reading of the chapter that we are currently on. This chapter is chapter 58, Blank. Hey, Kurosaki! Nice to meet you? What? You still don't remember me? It's Momohara! Tetsuo Momohara! After all the times I asked you to join the karate team, you still don't remember me? Sorry. I'm at school right now. Take one of these pills every hour. By tonight, your wound should be a lot better. Then we'll have our first session. Skull and crossbones. I wouldn't want you to die in the middle of training. Your school vacation starts tomorrow, right? Just go to school until then. That's why I'm at school right now. This medicine is amazing. One pill and the pain's gone. But what really shocked me was that no one at school remembers Rukia. Momohara is sitting in Rukia's place. No one has even mentioned her name. Now I understand that is what it means to return to the Soul Society. She's erased from this world, from people's hearts. Everything about her existence was erased. She's just gone. A blank. Bleach. Chapter 58. Blank. Well, that's all the announcements. Okay, this is a vacation, so don't spend too much time studying, except for this class. And don't be afraid to break a few rules. It makes for good memories. What's she encouraging us to do? Alright, kids, come back alive in September. Class dismissed. Let's stop by Jonathan's on the way home. I'd rather go to Royal Host. I want something sweet. Like what? Let's get out of here. You hear Coldplay's new one? Yeah, not bad. Shida was absent today. I thought maybe he'd remember Rukia, but... Ichigo! Now, where's the watermelon? Ow! No, Ichigo, no! Break the watermelon, not my skull! Suikawari. Split the watermelon. A popular summertime beach game in Japan. Watermelon, parasol, flotation, beach ball, surfboard, suntan oil, and swimsuit! Summertime is beach time! They're almost like synonyms. I propose we all go on a 10-day beach trip starting tomorrow. There'll be fireworks and tests of courage and mixed bathing and outdoor hot springs and hijinks. Come on, join me on Asano's Beach Bash this summer vacation. Sorry, I got stuff to do. What? Sorry, dude. I can't help it. Take it easy. I'm sorry, I can't go either. It's who or Hime? Nah, sorry, I've got nationals. Well, if Orihime and Tatsuki aren't going, neither am I. Same here. I'll pass. Oh, I'm off to Fuka tomorrow. You? Oh, why are you freaking out? With who? Are you going with those two sexy older girls? Tell me the truth. No, but close. Actually, it's Marie, my girlfriend, and 9 of her friends, and me, 11 of us. Fuel on the fire. Why 11? Are you starting a nude soccer team? You're like a movie star. Ah! It feels weird. Everyone's acting normal. Our world still rotates without Rukia. Why shouldn't it? Rukia's originally from the Soul Society. She never really belonged over here. What if that's true? Orihime? What's wrong? Where'd Rukia go? Why did everybody suddenly forget her? Do you know? Oh, she went back to her own world, and You want to help her. Yeah. I'm surprised. I didn't think you could see us. Why didn't you? What are you going to do? Rukia came from that world in the first place, right? Her family, her friends, everything, they're all over there. What are you going to do after you save her? Will you take her away from her family and friends and bring her back here? Is that the right thing to do? Well, of course it is. Huh? Sure. I could say all this stuff, but you've already made up your mind. You'll throw out your lower lip like this, clench your jaw, cross your arm, throw your head back, and tell her, alive, there's a chance you could see your family again someday, but you can't if you're dead. That's what Ichigo I know would tell her. Go save her, and good luck. I don't want my friend Rukia to die either. Thank you, Orihime. Sure. Just don't get hurt, okay? No, I won't let him. Chad? Uh-huh. Yeah. Uh-huh. I've made up my mind. Hello. Welcome. How are your wounds? Completely healed. Good. Do you get permission from your family? Yeah, I told him I'm crashing at a friend's house. Couldn't you come up with anything better? Watch it. Alright, let's get started. Thanks for saving me! Did, did you say something? No. I didn't think so. I'm looking forward to this. Summer vacation begins. Shut up, you little jerk! Sorry. And then that is not the end of the volume. We still got some left to go. But that will be the end of this chapter. This has been chapter, was it 58, right? Blank, I believe. Yes. I can remember things after 7 minutes. I can retain information longer than a fish. Great stuff. I don't always get it right, folks. I'm not always correct. I will be the first to admit that. There are things I will misremember, things that I won't be aware of. For instance, first thing that came to mind whenever I was reading through this, realizing, yeah, of course Orihime didn't heal. Like, I went back and forth on whether or not Orihime had a hand in healing Ichigo, but like, I don't think anything in this really shows that Orihime would have. But anyway, whew, lots to take in. Let's talk about the chapter, right? Let's get into our discussion of the art and critical analysis of the narrative, kind of how these things are moving it all forward. I like that we open up on this character that we haven't seen yet, this guy Momohara. It's kind of interesting because it's like who is this dude? And I like that he just acts casual around Ichigo. Obviously, he wants Ichigo to be a member of the karate team. If you remember, Ichigo did train whenever he was a kid, right? So it makes some sense that there be people that want Ichigo to join. I think this guy's got a cool design. I like his little bandage on his temple there or whatever. But yeah, that's Momohara. I like that, of course, Ichigo. He's really thrown right now because this guy's in Rukia's seat, right? That's the thing that's giving him pause. I do like that we get like this upshot of Ichigo kind of being like, who are you? And I think also comedically this really works here with Ichigo not even being fully in the panel, just kind of his head peeking up from it. Stuff like that I think work really well just comedically, just like the framing of it. Of course, Ichigo's bag, 15 on it, because he is, of course, Ichigo. We get this interjection of like, I'm at school right now, which is a bit strange until we get the context on the next page. Of course, yet again, we know this is flashback thanks to the black background. I don't remember if the anime just does sepia or some sort of overlay to indicate that, or what. Um, it's a little clearer in the anime, maybe. Though, I say clear in the anime, I think they have just different technique to kind of show it off that it's a flashback. Anyway, yet more kind of indicating that Kisuke didn't rely on Orihime to close his wounds or to reject the event of his damage. We have Kisuke giving Ichigo very dubious pills. I love that almost everything from Kisuke's shop is some really questionable nonsense. It's all like some bootlegged, what is going on. Anyway, um, still effective though. All the pain's gone. Of course, the big thing here is that no one at the school remembers Rukia, right? If as you do know, they do have ways to wipe people's memories, so it makes sense that the Shinigami would have some sort of stuff ready to wipe everybody's memory of Rukia. But surprisingly, Ichigo and his friends haven't had their memories wiped. What I assume happened was that Kisuke took care of it, right? Because if the other Shinigami are evolved, then they would have probably tried to find Ichigo and be thorough with that, right? In the past, we've only really seen Rukia use the device that she did to wipe people's memory. So you got to figure maybe it's Kisuke took care of it, because if you recall, I believe that Kisuke is the one that kind of set her up at the school in the first place. So I think he handled making sure that nobody at the school remembered, other than, of course, Ichigo and his friends that already had connection to her, such as Chad and Orihime, as we come to find out in this chapter. Um, yeah, so there's this whole idea of somebody just being gone and people not even being aware of them. Like this, obviously, the chapter's called Blink. It's like there's just an empty space. I think this chapter cover is pretty haunting for that. Dipping into almost where you could get to some horror kind of thing, like a person that didn't even exist sort of thing. But more here, it's just kind of hitting those emotional notes. One thing that I want to say with all of that, and the whole idea of all these people not having these memories of a person, and ooh, excuse me, this person essentially not existing. That's something that comes up in a couple of the Bleach movies. So the first animated movie, Memories of Nobody, is literally called Memories of Nobody and focuses entirely around a character that might exist, not only or might only exist in memory after the case or whatever. There's a whole thing there. It's been a while since I've watched Memories of Nobody. I remember enjoying it a decent bit, but it not being anything that really amazed me. I'll have to look that one up. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you're meant to watch that one some point in the next arc. I'm going to be reviewing all the movies, by the way. Spoilers, I guess, is that I will be doing a review for all of the Bleach movies, including the live action one. That one actually takes place the earliest in the timeline. So that should be going up around the time this episode goes up. But yeah, I'll be looking into doing that. Anyway, what I'm saying is, it's interesting that this idea of not having the memories of a person or a person not being there anymore, or people forgetting a person. It's something that comes up in a couple of the Bleach movies. So the first movie, Memories of Nobody, it comes up, and the second movie, Diamond Dust Rebellion. That movie is entirely about a character that has been forgotten as well, which is weird. That has a real connection to some characters we haven't met yet. But the idea is that there's a significant person from the past that these people don't remember or have neglected or whatever. Um, Something like that, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I watched that one, and I'm not really a fan of that one because I'm not a huge fan of just the plot of it in general. The third movie I like a lot, and yet again, focuses on, at least I think it's the third movie, focuses on once more those sorts of a memory kind of aspect. It's Fade to Black, and that movie takes like this entire plot of like a lot of people losing their memories, and so it's like, what if everybody forgot about Ichigo? And so, like Ichigo's kind of interacting with a lot of people that should know him, but they don't, and so they see him as like a threat or whatever. It's kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, this idea of memory, or of some people forgetting things selectively, it's something that comes up, and that like, I don't know how much Kubotai had control over what the plot of the movies would be, or if that was entirely done by the animation studio. That's something that I'd have to look into. But it is something that I think is kind of explored in Bleach and ends up being not like a central theme or anything like that, but I think because it's so similar to the idea of like, you have bonds to somebody, right? You have this connection to another person, and so like the whole idea of remembering them or being aware of them is significance. I think here it kind of mirrors like someone at your school dying is, especially, I think this what this is maybe having a bit of a mirror to, right? Or even to a lesser extent moving away, but like kind of like losing somebody in your life, especially in a school setting. Obviously they're in a school setting here. This happens to a lot of people. Like usually, like I almost everyone that I know, especially in my school, but in other schools too, almost every school there's been someone that passed away during the time that they were in school. um or at least like someone had to move to another city and people missed them. But usually someone that passed away, and there's the whole thing of like, oh, is somebody going to sit at their desk? That kind of thing. So like this whole idea of like Momohara sitting at the desk, I think is meant to kind of evoke that too. But this notion of, this loss of a person that was significant in your life, and then life kind of just moving on, and you're having these, like, this thought of like, does anybody remember them? Do they even care? Like, what's the deal? And it's like, well, yeah, there are people that know and care in real life, but like, life moves on, right? You still have to go about everything daily. So Bleach is kind of exploring that, like the sort of loss of a person in your life, especially that was like there in those kind of routine moments. But it's a little bit different because it's like Rukia just being detained at the Soul Society, but even still, it's the sort of thing that I think has connections for people, certainly, and some for me as well. I had a friend that we lost in high school, which was pretty tragic. So you know, it fits. Um, I do, of course, like the gags with this teacher giving them uh, maybe the best advice, but honestly, some kind of terrible. Come back alive in September. I think the idea is that she's kind of joking about that, whereas we get the very real sense that Ichigo and his friends might not. That there are like legitimate threats to their lives now. Anyway, here, time to date somebody, some manga here by mentioning the band Coldplay. Who who I don't think Coldplay is a band that's remembered fondly by anybody, but maybe it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Coldplay fans, call me out. Yeah, interesting that, of course, Ishida is absent. As we know, he was wounded pretty significantly, even though Urahara did patch him up. Maybe he's still gone because of either his wounds or something else is going on. So we're given a little bit of moment to think about that before we're pulled into literally this other comedic scene with Keigo. Um, I like that, of course, Keigo has this whole idea of going on a big vacation, and none of the other characters are going to, right? But I think here really this is, obviously I think the comedic bits they're solid enough. Um, we get a lot of these character expressions, especially Keiko looking really over the top here. But you know, I think the yeah, number one Beach Boy gets me. But the thing that's really kind of being highlighted here is the disparity between, like, again, that's sort of the normal sort of thing that people might do, like in a high school, and then Ichigo being a part of this other world, right? That he has other plans, that he's kind of matured into more than just your typical high school, beach trip kind of thing. So no, there's not going to be a beach episode. Instead, we're going to get Ichigo training and then going to Soul Society, right? I like that, of course, everybody else has excuse not to be there. I like that Chad's just like, I'll pass. Yeah. Even Mizuhiro has plans, of course. And I like that it comes out that Mizuhiro does have a girlfriend, Marie, and 9 of her friends. Because of course he does. Keigo's the kind of guy that's like, real loud and obnoxious, and Mizuro is friends with him, but Mizuro is much smoother. Yeah, we get this back and forth, and again, this kind of reminder of this regular school life that these characters are in a couple ways drifting away from, right? And that Rukia herself had drifted away from. And Ichigo does exactly reflect on that. I think I really like this like transition here from this kind of gag reaction to it's a little bit of time has passed and Ichigo's really thinking on this, and we just get his eyes as he's we get into his thoughts here. I like this transition in general. I like the thought also here being like right on the shoe, so we really get that. It sells that sense of him walking or that movement because our eyes are immediately going to focus on that part of the panel anyway. I don't know. It's just effective like placement in a way that is surprising. But yeah, kind of an interesting thing of like she never really belonged here, that she's from this other world. I like that comes up with Orihime as well, right? Of course, we get our power line shot the second that Rukia gets mentioned, which is nice. And I like that, here Orihime does finally bring up the thing that had been on Ichigo's mind, right? That she confronts him about that. And I think that's kind of cool for a number of reasons. One, as we've come to learn, Orihime is a lot more perceptive than she lets on. So, like, Ichigo having Ruki on his mind all day is something that Orihime would have been kind of keyed into and aware of. Obviously, it's something that she's been thinking about too, clearly. So she'd probably want to talk to Ichigo about it anyway. But she'd be aware that this was something that was maybe on Ichigo's mind that was kind of bothering him. The other big thing is that this is a big step for Orihime because she typically doesn't approach Ichigo alone. She's usually a lot more reserved, or will put on like a face or whatever. So she's becoming a bit more forward and a bit more open and kind of earnest, which I like. It's a neat kind of development that builds well from what we had understood of her before. I like that, in this page transition, like, we have her asking this question, and the next time that we come to this next panel, we get a few empty panels that, I like that they're not just blank, that they're actually like the sky. Yet again, another time of Kubo. He did this previous chapter with Kisuke's cane, but here he's doing that same sort of thing where something's extending from one panel to the other. I think that's a neat effect and works pretty well here to sort of bridge across the page. Neat to see again. Anyway, we get this moment where I think, like, effectively, essentially between the pages and panels, we can assume that Ichigo told her the entire story, which is kind of cool. I think that transition works. I think there's ways to do that are far clumsier, and this like using the page turn and using those few panels does a good job of creating enough space, and from the context of what she says immediately, we can really quickly infer like, oh, okay, Ichigo explained it to her. So yet again, I think really here we're seeing like Kubo really having strong sense of how to use the form of the manga, and that's something that I'm glad is established pretty early on. I think he only gets better at it really as he goes, but it's cool to see in action like that. That like it's simple sort of things like that that getting it right really helps you transition from one moment to another. It makes that feel very natural whenever it's something that could be tricky to pull off or like something that could be easy to mess up. Anyway, um, I like that Ichigo, of course. Yeah, he didn't think that Orihime was even able to see them, so we get that Ichigo is maybe a bit less perceptive, but that's something that's been drilled in by both Uryu and then later on by the various Shinigami there, right? Both Byakuya and Renji really highlight how much Ichigo doesn't know or how little he's aware of things. So I like that kind of comes up. I also like that Orihime here even like cuts him off and is very direct too about like what are you going to do. And we get her even maybe being a little bit like snappy or serious, right? Of like, well, Orihime's whole world is in Soul Society. Like she was just visiting here. Um, all of everything for her is in that world. Um, and yeah, like that we get this focus on Orihime's mouth as she's really rattling off like is this really the right thing to do? Take her away from her family and friends. What are you going to do after you save her? What's your plan, really? That's surprising, right? We haven't really had Orihime speak out this harshly against like somebody that hasn't been antagonist to her, right? This is clearly maybe something that she's been considering, right? If she's on like this whole thing of like what is she going to do about Rukia, right? Because clearly she's been considering it too, and we know that Urahara picked both her and Chad up, so they're involved in this in some way. So you know, like clearly they don't know that Rukia has been brought back to Soul Society, but the idea of like, well, Rukia is gone. What's the deal? You know, once this has all been explained to Orihime, I think this being like the immediate conclusion that she comes to, especially after stewing on like where Rukia is all day, I think this makes sense for her. It's surprising that she's like that forward with it, though, right? Obviously, Ichigo's surprised, so I think this next panel of Ichigo really does sell like his shock at that, and even this moment where he like hesitates, and of course, I like that Orihime reiterates, of course, it's the right thing to do, right? And I, even though she was being like really serious, like the implication being that it would be wrong, um, I think there's like two different things to take away here. Maybe one, it being the right thing to do, like, well, yeah, obviously her family and her friends back at Soul Society want her dead and aren't sticking up for her. So clearly she has better friends here, right? Or more loyal ones, or ones that are willing to actually like protect her life. So there's, if it's the right thing to do is in literally right by Rukia, yeah, I believe so, right? But the other big thing is that, as we know, Orihime often puts on a face to kind of appease other people. And so in a lot of ways, this might be her putting on that face too. But I think it's a little bit of both, right? I think it's like her being like, well, yeah, of course it's the right thing. There might be some issue with it where Rukia not being executed, but that's not the case, right? The other big thing is that Orihime knows that Ichigo's already made up his mind. So it's like, yeah, as much as I could complicate the issue, right, and like introduce all these things that kind of might put doubt there, you've already made up your mind. So it's kind of neat that Orihime does give Ichigo pause, and as we've known with Urahara, Ichigo said that he had to have this resolve to go and rescue her, right? It can't be half-assed. So it's kind of cool that like here he does have a little bit of pause about like that, but we know that Ichigo's already made up his mind, and that no matter what Orihime brings up, he should still be in the same place. He's maybe just thinking about how to put it to her, or how to exactly phrase things. I think this is a really cute image of Ichigo here. We usually don't see him being so like polite, but I like his fingers interlaced as he's kind of sitting there and waiting for what Orihime is going to say. And speaking of characters being cute, we of course get Orihime in, doing her impression of Ichigo, right? Of being like, if she's alive, there's a chance she could see her family again. You can if you're dead, that sort of thing. So, uh, I think, the idea is like, Orihime is willing to side with Ichigo because she kind of has the sense of how Ichigo thinks, right? That Ichigo would value her life and the ability for things to work out better for her were she alive rather than dying kind of a pointless death or whatever. So I like that this also is a moment for Orihime to kind of flaunt her knowledge of Ichigo, but also that she's kind of happy that Ichigo is the kind of person to take up that stance, right? That's what's giving her this much joy, is that even though she has these sorts of thoughts herself, maybe, like these sorts of concerns, like, is it right to do the X, Y, or Z? She's like, well, Ichigo would really be sure that it was right, and he would reassure in this sort of way. And she likes that about Ichigo, that he would kind of put things straight that way. Um, so that gives her some comfort, or at least some joy, to know that Ichigo probably wouldn't be upset. But in another way, this is kind of sweet of her too, because Ichigo might have those sorts of hesitations, as we saw, like there, like he was pausing before he had anything to say back to Orihime. So in a lot of ways, this is Orihime reaffirming Ichigo too. So it's not just her like finding reaffirmation from Ichigo, but also like kind of performatively, like building up his own resolution to save her. So it's pretty cool. I like it. It's a strong moment from her that like shows a couple different things, like her understanding of Ichigo, but also her kind of being in a lot of ways this like guidepost for him, right? Or this sort of reminder of who he is, and that she likes that about him. Um, yeah, really, really, happy Orihime, pretty sweet. I like that. We get, yeah, she doesn't want her friend to die either, which is cool too. I like that she considers Ruki to be a friend. Um, they've only hung out a few times, but it's nice. I like that Ichigo gets this very serious sort of expression, stands up real slowly, and we kind of turn into him thanking her because, again, like she's really helped to give Ichigo this resolve, right? To remind him of who he is and how he is, and the sort of optimistic outlook that he has, in a lot of ways. So, yeah, and instead of it being like dour and worried and everything, Orihime is able to really brighten Ichigo, which I think is a cute moment between the two of them. I don't remember this being in the anime, actually. Like, it's been a while since I've watched the anime, so do let me know if the scene is in the show. But, yeah, I don't recall this off the top of my head. Of course, Orihime's smile fades as she relates, like, don't get hurt, right? So the second time this chapter that we've had somebody being like, hey, don't die over the break. But, obviously, Orihime, she cares for Ichigo probably more than she cares for Rukia, right? So a lot of this is like, yeah, she wants Rukia to get saved and everything, but really she wants Ichigo to feel more, like, she doesn't want Ichigo to have these doubts, right? She wants Ichigo to be the kind of confident person that she's always seen him as. And she wants to kind of help him bounce back from maybe a lot of the struggle that he's been going through and a lot of the frustrations that he's had. So, yeah, I think it's a great moment, especially for like Orihime to kind of uplift Ichigo. She kind of mentions all these things that might be hounding him, and then is able to resolutionally or resolvedly kind of build his own resolve. I don't know. It's a cool moment. I like it. I like also here we got, of course, Ichigo. Things Orihime and then ascends these stairs, running up towards essentially this future, but also I can kind of infer that as we talked about the stairs before with Ichigo kind of running up towards Rukia descending down towards him whenever they were fighting the Minos and here, or not the Minos, Grand Fisher. And here we have Ichigo running up towards stairs, assumably towards Rukia again. This idea of Ichigo doing this ascent towards Rukia and like towards Soul Society is something that kind of gets visually like shown to us a lot. In the second intro of Bleach, the D-Techno Life intro, there is a fantastic bit where Ichigo is leading the characters running upstairs towards, assumably, where Rukia is, and I always think about that too. So there's this very clear kind of visually repeated motif of Ichigo ascending towards Rukia, or ascending a staircase, especially towards Rukia, right? I think that speaks towards, the idea of her being from this higher plane, the Soul Society, and, Ichigo kind of undergoing the effort to reach up to where she's at, right? So, yeah, it's cool. I like that we get that kind of more than once. It's subtle, but I think it's there for sure, Because we could have Ichigo just run down the street, or we could have Ichigo like run down some stairs. But the fact that he's specifically ascending and that we've gotten that multiple times in relation to Rukia, I don't think is a mistake. Anyway, we get Orihime talking on the phone. She says, "No, I won't let him." And then, it says like, "Chad, yeah." And I wonder if she's talking to either Chad or Urahara, right? Like, she might be talking to Urahara about, Urahara Kisuke about Chad, or she might be asking, like, Chad, like, questioning him over the line. I assume that it is her talking to Kisuke, especially because the next scene's got Kisuke. Also, she's, like, in this payphone. By the way, payphones are a thing. For those of you who are, much younger, and don't know what a phone booth is or a payphone, people didn't always used to have cell phones, folks. They used to have to actually use these things with cords on them, like landlines and stuff. Look it up. It's wild. Anyway, I think the idea of her using a payphone to reach Kisuke maybe makes some sense, even if she might have her own cell phone. But this idea, her coming to this thing where she said, "I've made up my mind," I think that really reflects her talking to Kisuke, right? So, in a lot of ways, Kisuke, if we think about the last thing that he said to Orihime and Chad, right? Before he, of course, picked them up, after their individual fights, but during the Minos arc, right? No, that was still during their fights. Okay, so it was after their fights. I'm trying to get my timeline in my head correct. So it's like, of course, so they were both nursed back to health, and then Kisuke told them the whole thing about, like, showing them the door, and that they need to make up their mind or whether to pass it or not, right? That there's this threshold that he's going to put them on the edge of. And at the time, it's, maybe easy to interpret that as like, okay, well, watch Ichigo fight this Minos. You see, like, you're going to be a part of this world where you're going to, like, be fighting against these sorts of entities. And at the time, we can kind of read that as, oh, they're going to be doing battle with hollows. But obviously, Kisuke knows that Soul Society is going to come for Rukia, and that this is going to kind of culminate in this rescue operation, right? And so, in a lot of ways, I think Kisuke is gathering those different allies, of course, to really be like, hey, look, there's going to be this defining moment where it's like the pass that door is literally the pass into Soul Society, right? And so you have to wonder if Kisuke is going to train them as well, which would make sense for why they can't go on the big beach vacation with Keigo. Sad times for him, but is what it is. I can only hope that Tatsuki and Mizuru are also practicing off screen, but it is what it is. We immediately hit back to Urahara at the shop. Jeans has got a great expression there. Ichigo being super extra, throwing his shirt open and having these kind of jagged wounds. This kid's jacked for a teenager. Anyway, but I like this completely serious Ichigo face at the top of the page here. And, Kisuke Kisuke being very silly, kind of not like very different from the serious way that we saw him last time that we had him around. And like, we get this sense like, okay, well, we're gonna get started with this serious training, and I love that Ichigo kind of put in the same headspace that Orihime put him in, right? That he's pretty grateful, right? He thanked Orihime, and now he's gonna thank Kisuke. So of course he gives this very deep bow and shouts. Of course that gives Kisuke some surprise. I love the kind of joke back of like, do you say something? And Ichigo be like, nope, and that giving Kisuke a smile. I think that's a cute exchange, but pretty telling, right? That Ichigo's not the kind of person to usually thank people, right? He usually puts on more of a tough guy act. He does this sort of thing that Orihime pointed out, right? That stiff lower lip sort of deal. So I think it's cool that we do get this moment where where Ichigo is really, being very thankful both to Orihime and then later to Kisuke. And then Kisuke's like lets him still have his like little tough guy act too. Anyway, we get cut away as they say like, I'm looking forward to this from Kisuke, and the idea being like, of course, he is very invested in cultivating Ichigo, right? That's what he's been kind of doing a lot throughout the series so far. So it's neat that we've seen this kind of come to them actually interacting rather than Kisuke kind of being in the shadows and pulling the strings and watching from a side and all of that. Also, this idea of like, I'm looking forward to this. This also builds momentum for us as the reader because we're probably looking forward to that, right? It's building this hype towards like, oh man, we're gonna get this training with Kisuke. What's that gonna be like, right? Like, how's Ichigo gonna get these, powers back? How's he gonna become powerful enough to actually fight those guys in Soul Society? Will he learn his sword's name? A lot of that's kind of on the table for us. So having characters excited for this moment helps to build our excitement too, right? Helps to have a little bit of resonance between us and those characters. Of course, I love Ichigo with his shirt open, like going like, "Oh, sorry," to this random guy that's like, "Shut up." It's a good joke. But yeah, that's it for this chapter. I love some of these kind of expressions for Kisuke. Him with the huge dark circles around his eyes make him look like very raccoonish, very kind of silly. But that's how he is. Regardless, lots of good expressions from a lot of our characters. Keigo being silly. Very cool sort of thoughts on Rukia, right? A lot of these characters kind of going through that loss and how they're handling this moment of transition, this trauma that they all kind of have shared of losing Rukia and what they're going to do about it, right? So I think that's neat. Ultimately, I think the strongest thing for me out of this is actually that interaction with Orihime. It's not one that I remember, so getting to kind of revisit and see that again, I think that's just like a strong moment for their kind of relationship that we've gotten, and probably like the one of the neatest interactions that we've had between the two of them so far. So it's kind of neat to get that, especially in the wake of Rukia's disappearance and having these other people, these other connections that Ichigo have to kind of help prop him up, right? I think that's one of the things that again I'll return to is that this idea of like the power of friendships or the connections that you have to other people. It's something that we get a lot in shonen manga, but like Bleach always does, for me at the very least, it always just does the thing, which I really appreciate, instead of explaining it. And so, in general, this is kind of what I prefer in writing anyway. And it could be an issue with anime, especially in manga, but typically anime has this problem more so than anything, is that there can be the urge to explain, right? And you get this even in novels too. that, like, you want to explain things to people. You want to tell them about the world or these characters. And so where this gets really terrible is like stuff like flashback, where it's like, okay, well, we have to sit with this big flashback so that we can be told, you know, how dire this character's background is or the connection they have to somebody else. Instead of just being shown those things, right? Like whenever we see Byakuya, we can really infer a lot of things about him by just having a few hints, right? From his expression, how he carries himself, how other people refer to him, all of that tells us a lot about the character. So we don't need to have some whole flashback with him being, brought into this noble house and being raised in a certain way and learning to be, like a very law-oriented person, even over the sake of his sister's life and stuff. Like we don't need all of that. And I think a worse manga would spend a lot of time kind of wasted just explaining things. Um, because like one, I think that kind of undervalues the reader themselves, right? I think readers tend to be smart enough to infer, especially if you're strong at conveyance. So whenever I really praise a lot of the expressions in Bleach are the way in which the panels are being used. I'm really praising a sense of conveyance, right? That there's this mood or this idea about the character that Kuwatai's trying to convey through these images, and that it's coming across in these different ways that really help to build the character and make them feel more well-rounded, or to tell us more about them, or to tell us more about these moments, to inform us, right, or inform the scene. And that comes from the writing too. We get that in the writing as well. But like, where things I think become less interesting for me is, like I said, whenever things start to get explained rather than conveyed or showed, um, otherwise. So yeah, it's one of the things that I always think about a lot. I think one thing that kind of threw me for a loop. So this week it got announced that the return for the anime is going to have some extra scenes kind of thrown in, and that things will be kind of elaborated upon, and that kind of gave me pause because, like, one, it could be really cool. I think there's times in which the anime for Bleach really does add a lot. Like, and whenever I say add a lot, like it embellishes moments that could use that sort of embellishment. So like fights are given a little bit more, time to kind of breathe and have exciting choreography. Or these kind of characters are given a little bit more interaction that helps to sell, like, their connection with each other. What I think would where I have pause about adding more to the anime, and this is certainly an issue that the anime for Bleach has, is that a lot of times whenever it adds things, it tries to get too much in that explaining territory, where it's like, okay, well, this episode's going to be a whole big flashback episode. I will note that that's actually one thing that happens in. There's a couple of times in the anime that already up to this point in the manga don't happen in the manga. So there's an episode around the Grand Fisher arc, I believe, where almost the entire episode is a flashback about Rukia going through her Soul Reaper training, and like her life as a Soul Reaper growing up and stuff. I'm pretty sure like we get like a lot of that stuff in a whole episode around then, whenever we really don't need it. Like I think we get enough of that stuff from Rukia, and especially not seeing Soul Society until we actually go there, I think is significant. And not seeing other Soul Reapers. Like I said, there's a Soul Reaper that shows up in the Grand Fisher arc in the anime that isn't in the manga, that like is just there to kind of interact with Rukia and provide a basis for more stuff to be said about Soul Society and all of that. And I don't know, that kind of lessens the excitement of whenever Renji and Byakuya do show up, right? At least for me, it does. It kind of, it makes the significance of seeing other Soul Reapers a little bit dampened. Um, and I think the anime does that kind of poor addition more than it does like effective sort of elaboration. I think building on something meaningfully is significant, but especially whenever you start to have, especially like the sense of filler, right? That it's just stuff to fill time. So we have just these drawn out flashback sequences that only set up more of what we already knew about a character. They don't really, sure, it's like, okay, now I know why this character is the way they are, but I already accepted that they were that way. And I think it's more evocative if I don't know exactly the particulars of why. That's the thing, is I think there's certain people that are going to read anything, they're going to consume any media, any sort of fiction, and they're going to want to know a lot of those why questions, like why is this, or what is that character's background, or what were their parents like, or whatever, and they will always want those questions answered. And I'm not saying that's invalid, but I think that what's exciting about fiction is that it evokes that in within us, that there's this moments of really, you know having these questions, right? And I mentioned this in the previous episode, or one of the previous ones, right? The idea of building up a build up for an eventual payoff, right? And so I think good fiction is evocative. It makes us start to question these things and, imagine this bigger world, right? Because it's all fictional, it's all made up. But I think the important thing to keep in mind is that, like, that's fine, but not everything needs to be answered, because that's a less interesting story. Because for a story, you want to have drive and clarity, you want to have purpose, and everything that you depict should be meaningful and drive the story forward in a way and really inform the larger narrative in a way. And, getting to learn things about secondary characters that already was kind of conveyed to us, that we understood everything that we really needed to know for the sake of the story, it's like, that's unnecessary, right? And you'll get that sort of thing all the time, where people will be like, "Oh man, I wish I would have known X, Y, or Z," but like ultimately, it's insignificant in regards to the actual plot. And I think that's where the anime does the worst whenever it starts to add things, is that it adds these things that, like, sure, kind of explore the world more fully, but they're insignificant in terms of the larger plot, and their addition only makes the pacing worse. And pacing issues in anime are already a problem. Like, part of what makes manga effective is that you can spend as much time with a page or a panel as you need, but that you can read through it, at your own pace, whereas in anime you have to spend real time, second to second, with it. So, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get through some shows, whereas reading some things, it can be much easier to get through, especially if they're very dialogue heavy. I find if something's going to be really focused on the dialogue, then I almost certainly just want to read it instead of watch it. There's a few times whenever performances can really put that over for me, but otherwise reading things tends to be better in that case for me anyway. Whew, big aside, but what I'm saying is, what I'm essentially getting at here, to pull this thread all the way back, is that what I like most is whenever a series does a very good job at conveyance and at just showing, these sorts of ways in which the characters interact, that informs us in how they think and feel, instead of, us getting it explained to us. So the entire scene with Orihime, never does it stop and give us internalization or like a little flashback that explains any of where Orihime is coming from with any of this, but we can infer all of that from what she says, her expressions, all of that. And I think the fact that we can infer all of that speaks towards, strength of the art and the dialogue writing and all of that on its own. And so that scene can exist and happen, and it doesn't need to be the entire chapter. It can just be like, 3 or 4 pages, and it can be very effective and convey a lot with a little bit. And so whenever I think Bleach is working at its best, it's doing that exact sort of thing. And so, of course, I want to take the time to praise that. I want to say that that's what I like in writing. I like seeing that, and I think it's way too easy to get into the explanation zone especially in shonen manga. You get that all the time where like two characters fight, and then there's like a character or somebody explaining what's happening throughout the whole fight. It's like, oh, I can barely follow them with my eyes. They're moving faster than the speed of light. I can't even keep up, But if he counters with this special Raigeki super attack, he's concentrated all of his chakra, spiritual energy, ki into a single palm strike. But the enemies, and it's like, dude, you could just show me. Like, I could just see that, Like, you don't have to explain it, right? Like, you don't have to waste the space or the time or, any of that. Like, just show me this stuff. I can figure it out, you know? Um, so, uh, yeah, I'd rather things just be, done straightforwardly and work that way. I think, Bleach does that very effectively whenever it's, firing on all cylinders. And in a lot of ways, that's why Chainsaw Man reminds me a lot about Bleach, other than kind of having this underdog, scrappy main character, and a lot of other kind of interesting similarities. The thing that I think Chainsaw Man does really well is that it doesn't feel the need to over-explain itself. It just presents things as is and assumes that the reader is competent enough to pick those things up, understand them, and roll with it whenever they don't, to put some confidence in that. Yeah, and so I think that's maybe one of the things that makes Bleach a better manga, or a manga that at least takes its authorship, its readership a little bit more intellectually seriously. The problem with that is whenever you do get people that don't have a lot of reading comprehension, or alternatively are just like kind of reading this on the weekly and they're not paying a lot of attention to it, and they're just kind of speed reading through it, and then they miss a lot of that stuff, and then they're like, what are all these plot holes? Bleach isn't any good. And oof, those are the sort of people that, I don't know, like, yeah, you had a bad experience, I'm sorry, but it's staggering how many people kind of didn't pay that much close attention and have a bad take that isn't really informed by the reality of the manga. So, I don't know. Bleach It right now at this point is having like a real renaissance, right? Where a lot of people are kind of coming out to praise it, and really look into strong points. So I'm not unique in that regard, but I always kind of upheld it as, it's a fun series. It's not always masterful or anything like that. And certainly, I think other manga do a lot of the stuff that it does well even better. But I really like Bleach. I'm really drawn to its cast of characters and its structures and its writing in general. So I will continue to do this series. I mean, that's why I'm revisiting it, and I'm not making this series about any other manga. Maybe one day I will, but not anytime soon. Got Bleach to do for a couple of years yet. Anyway, this has been the analysis and response. I got carried away there, as I am to do. But all of that is connected and kind of helps to inform a lot of where I'm coming from, which I think is significant. As always with like a review, I think the important thing is to understand what the reviewer values, because then you can kind of gauge that versus where your personal values are, right? So it's like I do that with game reviews all the time. It's like ultimately I'm going to just play the game and form my own opinion on it. But like if I watch anybody else's review or read anybody else's review, I know where that person's tastes lie, and so that helps me understand their review a little bit more thoroughly. Whew. Anyway, let's get into spoilers. Let's not make this too overlong of an episode, because there are some things that I want to talk about as far as connections to the rest of the series. So, obviously Momohara can get fucked. I don't remember Tetsuo Momohara. Get out of here. I did mention like Memories of Nobody and Fade to Black and all of that, and I think that's kind of interesting thinking about this, this person that's kind of disappeared. Bleach, of course, would revisit this idea of like losing memories of somebody, especially like this alteration of memories with what's his name? Oh man, it's not coming to me. Tsukishima, right? So that's kind of cool that it comes up in an antagonist later. Kind of neat, kind of cool. Makes Tsukishima connected to this sort of thing that I think thematically has always been kind of kicking around Bleach, the idea of memories and connection to people, especially when they're gone. Urahara with the Senzu beans. I don't know. Monster Man. I'm trying to think of some of the other things. So yeah, this idea of Rukia being erased whenever she return to Soul Society. Again, I read it a lot as like Urahara taking care of all of this. Not so much that like going back to Soul Society just magically erased everybody's memories, other than he's like other than Ichigo and his friends, right? So yeah, I think it's more Urahara handling all of that than and her being pulled, I guess, from the all the school information too. Curious. Here, I assume that Ishida is absent because he is training, right? Are acquiring his new glove and all of his Quincy stuff. It's a wonder though, because at this point, I'm pretty sure he's under the impression that his master, or not his master, that his dad has given up the Quincy lifestyle. So I guess he's just training on his own. I don't know what the deal is. Like, where do you get the glove from then? Right? Maybe I just need to get back to those parts in those chapters. But if you have any insights onto Ishida and maybe what he's actually doing here, it's not just spelled out for us. I'm pretty sure it eventually does get explained whenever Ishida shows back up. But yeah, it's cool that he's not there because it's a little hint like, hey, Ishida's clearly involved in something as well. Of course, here we know that Chad and Orihime are already kind of planning to be gone, right? So Orihime just being like, hey, I can't go, but not having any rationale for why, and Chad also not having any rationale. Whereas the other characters, like Tatsuki, who's like, I got the nationals, and Michiru, who is like, well, if Orihime or Tatsuki aren't going, neither am I, and Mizuiro, who's like, oh, I'm off to fuck it. Yeah, I'm sure you are with your girlfriend and all of her friends. Anyway, the fact that Chad and Orihime both kind of give a very non-committal, like, I'm not going, but don't explain why, I think that speaks towards the fact that both of them are planning to be involved in Urahara's whole dealio. We get this moment of course, Orihime approaching Ichigo, which, like I said, I read that as obviously Kisuke must not have debriefed them or spent that much extra time with them. So I also read that as Kisuke not using Orihime to heal Ichigo, which I think is the conclusion I came to the other chapter anyway. It is kind of interesting that like she does propose this whole thing about like, what are you going to do? Just like take her away from her friends and family and bring her here, and kind of neat that like that doesn't really need to pass. Instead, it's like we have this other option where a bigger evil arrives, and then Ichigo convinces everybody that Rukia didn't need to be executed in the first place, and that it should, and like they like literally like change a lot of the way that they think about things. I don't know. It's curious. It's interesting. I like it, but that like this sort of thing didn't have to pass. Also, I do like this connection between Orihime and Ichigo here anyway. I think it's pretty strong. When I look at the interactions between them, I really think about like the things that like built them as a couple, and would eventually kind of inform their romantic relationship going forward. And so I think this is a strong interaction between the two of them. But like, I'm interested to see how a lot of this comes up, especially whenever Ichigo decides to save Orihime, right? Because if I remember that correctly, like Orihime goes without a fight to be brought to, Los Noches, but I think the idea is that she realizes, like, one, that Ichigo's probably going to come after her because of everything that they've gone through, but then two, that this is going to be very, especially painful for him, or maybe even deadly. So I don't know. I'm interested to see kind of her takes whenever that becomes her in that sort of situation. But obviously, he's returning her to her actual home and everything like that. Anyway, yeah, I love that. Like, obviously, she's like, good luck, go save her. Don't want Ruki to die either. All of that, and ultimately, it's kind of coming from this place of caring for Ichigo, right? And that she doesn't want him to get hurt. Which oof, he sure does. He sure gets hurt quite a lot, put through the ringer. Yeah, definitely reading this as Orihime talking to Kisuke. That bit with Chad, I think, is, hey, get Chad and bring him back over to my place or whatever. Should he be willing to come too? Maybe Chad's harder to get a hold of than Orihime is. I don't know that we have a lot of other connection here. Obviously, there's the wounds that Ichigo has, which I wonder how consistent those ends up being across the series. He gets torn up a whole bunch. I do like that these do correspond with the wounds that he actually got in the battle, right across both shoulders to the chest, and then back through his abdomen from the back. So that's cool. Really also helps to sell where the chest strike would have been his soul chain, and the abdomen would have been where the soul sleep is, I believe. So kind of neat. Um, yeah, I don't know that we have any other big connections. I think the things for saving me bit with Kisuke is telling. Kisuke does save a lot of people at the very last moment whenever they're dying. So curious that, of course, he doesn't really care to acknowledge that as much, right? That he's like, yeah, I didn't think so, but he's glad that, like, somebody's thankful too, right? Because Kisuke really, I think a lot of the stuff that he's done has been thankless. You wonder what his connection is to the Visored here as well. People love to point that out, like, oh man, the Visored that have been living in this town this entire time, and all this stuff has happened, and like, why don't you get them involved? And it's like, well, they're laying low. They obviously can't get involved with this whole society stuff because they're like wanted fugitive criminals or whatever. So yeah, interesting to think about, nevertheless. Anyway, that's it for this one. Don't have a lot of other connections otherwise. If you do, if you see anything that you want to talk about that is, connected to the series at large, please let me know. I think about, like, some of that Orihime and Ichigo stuff, and especially Orihime wanting to kind of be at Ichigo's side or be able to kind of be, equal or helpful to him in the moment, because that's something that we revisit in the Thousand Year Blood War. That, like, ultimately, like, she gets to go into that final battle with him and really kind of be like his peer in a lot of ways that she hasn't gotten to be the entire series. So I think this is kind of an interesting starting point too. Anyway, that she can be that kind of moral support at the very least, if not, capable of supporting him even greater ways. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you see any other connections, or if you want to talk more about the ones that I brought up. As always, make sure to mark a comment for spoilers if it contains spoilers, just in case, so that nobody reading through the comments has to get unduly spoiled. But this has been it for this episode. I am Karakuri Gold, reminding you, as always, that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.